Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Sorry about last week's technical difficulties. I'm back in the studio with Atima the Hun, and we are going to continue the discussion on the Listen and Believe movement as well as the Me Too movement. How are you doing today, Atima?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Doing a lot better than I was last week when we kept having technical difficulties and we got cut off.
Yeah.
So, for everybody just coming in or who missed last week's stream or didn't get a chance to watch it, the Listen and Believe movement is an action being pushed by specifically feminists and the extreme left in the idea that every rape claim or every sexual assault allegation should automatically be believed, no matter what, without any evidence, and that women are always truthful about this, and that men always lie about this. Atima and I were having a very in-depth conversation last week when my system crashed and the stream got cut short. So we wanted to pick it back up this week and kind of finish the discussion and to discuss some of the concerns that this kind of stuff brings up. So, oh shoot, I've got some noise issues here.
Okay. So he's gonna go
There
muted.
we go. There we go. I got it cleared up. Okay, so let's pick back up where we left off, Atima. You were discussing how some of this causes you to fear for your son and some of the
Oh,
fears that it.
you know, I know what kids do when they're teenagers. I'm one of those fortunate parents that I was lucky enough that my teenage son wasn't afraid to talk to me about what he did. Like he candidly and openly and comfortably talked to me about a lot of what he did. I know there's some things he's not going to go into detail, and I'm happy he didn't. There's certain things I just don't want to know, and we're good at the level we're at. But he would talk to me about escapades, funny things that happened at parties he went to, or just we went to go swimming at so and so's house, and it turned into the funniest thing that's ever been. And he would tell me the stories and stuff like that. And the things that they all thought were funny together, if some sort of one of these modern day, and he's not even 30. Okay, my son's not even 30. So
Yeah,
some of the stuff that he did, that to me it sounds completely innocuous, it's funny, it's silly, but through the lens of this modern third wave feminist, he would be a sexual assaulter. It would, like, it's pretty and he didn't physically do anything to anybody, but
agreed.
he
I
would
mean,
be labeled that just for the goofy shit that they did.
well, Hun, have you heard some of the claims that some of these women's studies professors have been stating lately are considered modern day sexual assault? Unwanted requests for a date,
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, how dare he
kissing
ask me out?
someone without going in to kiss someone without getting verbal consent first.
What?
I mean, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Verbal
Uh,
consent. Okay, fantastic.
they practically want a contract and a pre negotiation written out for any kind of intimate contact. Some of this is just absolutely insane.
Well, it's very
Now,
misanthropic.
and don't get me wrong, I mean, consent is important, consent is very necessary, and you need to be communicative with your partners. But writing out a 12-page contract before intimate contract is a mood killer. I mean, seriously, I don't want to sit down with a lawyer to be tender and intimate with my partner if that's going to be what's required for me to be ensured that I'm not later, 30 years down the road, brought up on sexual assault claims. You know what I'm
Um,
saying?
but that's the thing that's terrifying, is because my son's a pretty upstanding person. I don't think he's ever been arrested. If he has, he's hidden it really, really, really well. You know, um, he's a really good person. He doesn't get in fights. He's not aggressive towards people. He hasn't done anything that's been. He's a good kid. He really is. Yeah, he has his wild things, and he plays video games, and stuff like that. But he's never done anything overtly negative, uh, or um, really even illegal. He's a good kid, and it's kind of similar to the Kavanaugh thing. He hasn't had the aspirations to be a judge or anything like that, so he hasn't done like the recording of his life and stuff. But similar actions, you know what I mean? He's never really done anything horrible to anybody. He's never, you know what I mean? He's just a generally good person. And I can't imagine what it's like being a generally good person because I have an arrest record and, I'm an asshole and I've been in fights and I know, I'm no angel. Okay. Uh, my son is far less, he was far less deviant in his youth than I was. Um, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
I think, and I fear for him, even in all his goodness and his, he's always like very, very stand up person, very strong morals. His moral compass has never been swayed, that kind of stuff. He's very, so I can't imagine, you know, having that kind of demeanor. And I see, there's kind of a similarity in that, the actions of the two. It's not like Kavanaugh's done anything completely out of the norm for the average teenage boy that doesn't get in trouble for the vast majority of, middle class America. He wasn't
Agreed.
that different. So it's got to be terrifying to other middle class American mothers to see this happen, 30 years down the road. Holy shit, are you serious? What off the cuff joke did my son make that is going to be called sexual assault, or he's going to be accused of, being a racist or a Nazi or some fucking insane thing because it was some off the cuff joke he made, or it was something he did with his girlfriend that they both thought was funny at the time, and now it's considered, I don't know, akin to rape in the next 20 years or whatever. You know what I'm saying? This is scary. What kind of weird, bizarre, decades later allegations are going to come up for my kids as, as he gets older? What are my daughters
And
that don't give a fuck about this whole thing and just want to treat men with the same respect that they want to be treated with? What's going to happen to them? What are they going to be labeled too? My kids are walking into a future that we have no idea how it's going to turn out. They really don't. It's rather unnerving.
it is. And I mean, it's not just a problem for the men either. This is going to cause a lot of problem for women. Women who are not in the feminist movement, women who are wanting to find a male partner and settle down and spend time with them and get to know them. It's going to cause this whole framework shift that's going to cause a lot more difficulty for them to actually connect with a man, because it's going to cause men to be less willing to put themselves out there. I mean, if, coming up to a girl and asking her, "Hey, I like you. You want to go have a drink or something," could be considered harassment.
Yeah, that's kind of scary, isn't it? That's
It
that's that's kind of the part that terrifies me the most is how are people supposed to interact now?
it really is, and it's one of those things that it's almost like the feminists want to stop all intersex sociality. I mean, I have females that I'm friends with, women that I'm friends with. I'll take them out to dinner. I'm not trying to date them. I'll take them and several other people out to dinner all together. Just to go share a meal and hang out and spend time with people I like to spend time with.
Yeah.
So, many of their ideas seem to be pushing that kind of society away. And that's
Well,
one of the
that's
ways. Go
yeah,
ahead.
that's one of the ways you destroy a society. That's one of those hallmarks of cultural Marxism that leads to you end up with nepotism and all kinds of horrible shit. It's
Well, yeah, because I mean, human beings are social creatures, and if we can't interact with somebody that's not in our family group for fear of, being brought up on police charges or fear of being labeled something and having our lives ruined, you end up forcing everybody into an insular manner, and you're going to end up with arranged marriages again, for crying out loud.
well, that's what I'm. It's a regression. It's like we've gone back to uh
Pre-Victorian.
Oh, yeah, it's you China.
Yeah, yeah,
China in the 1880s, I'm like, or the 1930s even. I'm like, fuck, really?
yeah.
China,
We're
India, really? Are you serious? Are you serious? You want to take her? This is so not Western what they're doing because you can't. It's bad. It's really really bad.
no, it really is, and
It's
it's
making
a
me crazy.
it's amazing that they're wanting to continue this narrative and this idea and continue to even broaden the spectrum. I mean, the Democrats right now are yelling that this whole Supreme Court appointment is illegitimate and we need to impeach Kavanaugh.
Well, how is it illegitimate?
Because they're claiming that the FBI didn't have enough time to finish the investigation.
Okay, but they already had six other background checks to use for information. All they needed was testimony because there's no physical evidence.
Yeah, and they went back and they talked with all the witnesses. And I mean, they've even released, both sides have seen the documents, and the Democrats are yelling it wasn't thorough enough. They didn't go back and talk to Dr. Ford in person. They didn't go back and interview Judge Kavanaugh in person. I think the whole action that they're trying to make is to force him into a possible perjury scenario where he forgets that he said it was raining instead of it was dry, and says it was dry that day, and all of a sudden now they've got to put him up on perjury charges.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I can come up with for any reason to want to try to force him to re-testify after he testified in front of the Senate. I mean, I don't know about you, but that seems to be the only thing I can see from it.
Yeah. Uh, no, I think they just. Okay. Do you remember when Trump got elected and it was just, oh, he has to go. He has to go. He has to go. And it was no matter no matter what information was presented to them, that there was no reason to be screaming and yelling and that you had no grounds for this. Because remember, they were trying to overturn the vote, and then they were trying to say it was Russia, and then it's a temper tantrum. They aren't even thinking about the reality of it. They're just stomping their foot and saying, no, we can't let this happen. It's already happened. Okay, well, no, you have to take it back.
Yeah, yeah, it
And this
really
is the only
is.
word they know for take it back is impeachment. So they go, you have to take it back. You have to take it back. Take that back. You can't do that. They're like freaking 11-year-olds.
They really are. Their behavior has become so so dystopian, so bizarre that they are almost behaving like pre-teenage children, realistically.
Yeah.
And it's frightening because this is coming out of adults, and we're not just seeing it out of the Democrat Party. We're seeing it out of, the expansion of the socialist and communist movements in the United States. We're seeing it out of the environmentalists groups. We're seeing it with the feminists. We're seeing it with the modern temperance movement,
Ugh.
which I don't even know how that got started again. We tried prohibition of alcohol. All it did was cause more crime.
Yeah,
You know,
it created syndicated crime.
yes, it allowed the mob to become the force it was for 50 years. It made them rich. It made them powerful. That's not what we need to be doing. That's actually the argument for the legalization of pot, is that prohibition doesn't work because it creates crime. I mean,
And now we have a privatized, corporatized federal prison system. That's working fabulous, isn't it?
I mean, it's just insane. But
No, culturally, all this is going to do is create anxiety. It seems almost like it's intentionally the way that this is being argued right now. It feels almost intentional, and I don't like to put intentionality to things because people tend to just be we're pretty blundersome and we're retarded. We are. We do a lot of stupid shit. So I try not to put any kind of intention to things, but it seems like it's almost an intentionally designed ideology in the fact that it stops all communication between people.
Well, and that seems to be kind of a reoccurring theme, especially with the institutionalization of cultural Marxism into the DNC and in so many of these ideas.
Well,
Is
and also
that,
in our education system.
oh, yes, and also into our education system. If you can stop people from talking, stop people from expressing different viewpoints, different ideas, you isolate them out and force them to turn in on themselves. And you basically force people to become nihilists. And I realistically think that that's insanely dangerous. I mean, Jordan Peterson has done several talks on nihilism and how destructive it is to the human psyche. And everything I've studied on it shows that it realistically would cause a society to implode on itself
Oh,
if
well,
the
there's
majority of the
tomes.
citizens became nihilist.
Well, there's tomes about nihilism because nihilism kind of started way back in the years, in the times of Aristotle and Socrates, and when the great Greek philosophers. That's kind of where nihilism got its inception is back then because life is what it is. Fuck it, who cares? Let's just party now. And it's kind of platonic, you know. Not gonna say it's not, um, but as it's evolved, nihilism has had a mountain of philosophy that counter argues it heavily. Nihilism itself, if you look at the overall amount of literature, nihilism doesn't have as much literature as all the other ideals and philosophical ideas that say nihilism is bad, okay? The problem is
Mm-hmm.
that nihilism is an easy way or is a it's a very, I guess, people like to be emotional. I don't know how, like, they like to hand flap. The people that like that kind of thing, that feel, um, the people that are naturally, like, they're emotionally dramatic people. It's not like they're trying to be dramatific or start drama or anything. They're just very big response, like emotional people. You know what I'm like, over expressive. I always
Yeah,
call those
yeah,
dramatic people because they're acting dramatic, not like they're trying to start drama. And it's hard to make the separation. But people that are very expressive,
yeah.
um, emotionally, they they tend to be the kind of people that are easier to manipulate for political ideologies like this. Because
Th-
something like nihilism, it gives you, because, well, fuck it, it doesn't matter, so I can do whatever I want, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
for somebody who has like a high emotional quotient, or is somebody who's just, they're super expressive and they're impulsive, that is going to be the perfect excuse to do whatever they want without consequence. Because YOLO, yo.
yeah. It really is. And the idea that there are no consequences no matter what, because it's everything right now, only in the now,
Mm-hmm.
is realistically it's a dangerous idea. I mean, shoot, half of my channel is dedicated to the idea that you have to think about what's going on around you. I mean, I do a prepared Monday show, for crying out frickin' loud, where
Yeah.
I teach people about how to prepare in the event of an emergency, how to prepare and think about what could actually happen in their life, and how to soften the impacts of negative actions or negative situations that are outside of their control, you know? And if all you do is live in that exact moment and you follow that nihilist concept where, YOLO, basically, nothing's going to really matter, everything's going to be just as it is today, no matter what, that just doesn't work when you have those kind of situations happen. I mean, what happens if your apartment complex is leveled by a freaking tornado? You're
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh, you locked
not
up.
living there. And do you have an
There we go.
evacuation plan? Do you know where you're going to go if that happens? Do you know where your closest family are? Do they have any kind of plans? If you're not thinking about that at all, ever, then how do you know what to do when that happens?
Well, most
You
people,
know?
we aren't taught about emergency preparedness anymore. Have you noticed? We used to have PSAs about emergency preparedness.
Oh,
It used
yeah,
to
yeah.
be, Or maybe that was just regional because I lived in California where, you don't get a warning for earthquakes, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Well, to be fair, tornado warnings are kind of vague in general. We think there's going to be a tornado in this, five
Well,
county area.
and
You know?
never mind the fact the vast majority of the population for this 5 county area is spread out like a motherfucker. So there's no actual tornado siren warning system in place where these people can hear it because you're talking about folks that own, you know, I think the average, especially where I lived, the average plot was like 15 acres,
Yeah.
which means that, because I only had two, which means that the average was probably much more somewhere around, I don't know, 75 to 100. For looking at the size of the plots and people's houses spread out, there's no way you're going to have a proper warning system when you're 20 miles out of town. No,
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 you
and that's the
can't.
vast majority of the counties that they're talking about. They're sparsely populated, but the population, or they're moderately populated, but the population is just fucking spread out.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, even in like Davidson County near Nashville, where I'm at, there's a large population, but it's much more closely clustered into the heart of Nashville. And then people are kind of spread out in the 5 or 6 counties around it. And they go into Nashville to work and then go home to where they're at. And once you
Yeah,
get out of the Davidson County area, the average land plot is between an acre and 20 acres. So if there's going to be a
yeah,
tornado near Nashville, no auditory siren is really going to work. Unless the person's actively listening to the radio or television, they're not even going to know about it.
yeah.
You know, so you have to be prepared.
Well, you
And I
also
think we
you
are
you learn
losing
how
a
to
lot of
read
that.
the weather too. You start learning
Oh,
how to
yeah.
read the weather too.
Oh, yeah, yeah, you have to. But that's part of preparedness. And I think that's part of what's going to start happening with society here is that men are going to go basically into, a survival preparedness mode if we continue to push this Me Too, listen and believe narrative construct while we're expanding the idea of what the interactions are optimized to be. And so men are just going to quit interacting. As
Well,
in,
I'm starting to see a lot of women push back, though. I'm starting to see a lot of female pushback on this. There's a lot of women coming out and going, no, we're done. We're done. I'm done. No, 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 I have kids. Screw you. No, you're not doing this. I know where this goes. You're not doing this. There's a whole lot of women out there, and most of them are mothers. Most of them are mothers. So you start pissing off the moms, it's not going to work. I think Me Too has maybe 2 years at most of any kind of notice left in them. You start pushing on the middle class moms, the ones that drive the economy.
oh, yeah. Yeah, the ones that do 90% of the shopping in the United States, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you want to, no, that's the dumbest idea I can think of because those aren't feminists. Most of they may say, "Oh yeah, sure, I'm a feminist. That's great. I love women. We're awesome." But other than that, they're they're like, "I'm awesome because I pick up 4 kids every day, and the smallest one weighs like 86 pounds, and I take them and I go do 6 different sports, and then we go to the store, and then we go home, and I cook and I clean, and my house is always clean." And those women, they think they're badass because they do the job they do. And they think that's what feminism is, yeah, look at me, I'm an awesome mom, feminism will go. And then they see Me Too and they go, oh no, I got sons, you can fucking die, bitch. That's just what they're going to say. That's a lot of the middle class. They're like, no, no, later.
Uh, and I
And that's
don't
what's
disagree
happening.
with you there.
There's pushback already. Just look what happened with the Kavanaugh thing. There's a small group of people that are having a temper tantrum right now.
Oh, yeah, yeah, they've been banging on the doors of the Supreme Court off and on for the past 3 days. And that realistically comes back to the idea that this whole thing is a giant temper tantrum. I
Isn't that
mean,
harassment though?
it's technically a public institutionary building, and they are basically yelling that it needs to stop, and so you run into this kind of public protest. Now, if the doors weren't these giant bronze steel reinforced, you know, basically tomb-like counterbalanced doors, it might be considered harassment, but you can't even really hear them on the other side of those main entryway doors because those things are, this thick. And so some guy banging his empty hand on him, I mean, he's more likely to bruise his palm than he is to really disturb anyone.
Either way, it's like I thought protests were just supposed to be you stood there and protested. You didn't bang on doors. A protest is for words. It's what are these people doing? You stand outside, you picket.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You chant. You don't bang on the door. You don't touch anything. Do they not understand what protesting is?
Well, no, they don't, because they're not actually protesters. I think, honestly, they are an angry mob. And I don't know if you've been paying attention, but CNN has been actively bad-mouthing people that use the mob word and can't seem to get past the idea that these Democrats that are accosting people in public, that are getting in their faces and yelling at them and blocking their path and generally, slandering them in public to everyone around them and yelling and screaming and becoming aggressive, that this is basically pre-lynching mob mentality.
Oh yeah. No, we're at the point where I think the midterm elections are going to lead to protests of some sort. I don't know if it's going to be left or right because I have no idea how the elections are going to go. It's like the media is giving so many mixed signals right now because polls really indicate that Republicans are stronger, way stronger. But they're always stronger in midterm elections. Republicans turn out far higher than Democrats for midterms traditionally. That's how it's been for a long time. I mean,
well,
at least a decade that I can think of clearly myself.
We're just going to have to wait and see on that. But I know that the Me Too movement and the Listen and Believe is not giving the Democrats any real help at this point.
Oh, no. No, this is sinking the party.
Because the action of random accusations against a sitting federal judge who is quite prominent, which are completely unfounded, really don't help.
No, I was and I think really what did it in was they thought they could pull it off like they did with the Me Too movement, where they could just throw out a whole bunch of really horrible sounding allegations and people would just believe them because, Harvey Weinstein's a movie producer and he's in this position of power, and it's easy to make it like a movie when you're talking about somebody like him. It's very easy to make it theatrical and entertaining, and it's much more entertainment based than news based when you do the Me Too movement there, right?
Yeah.
Much easier to do with Hollywood. Okay, you take that and you put that in the political arena with something like a Supreme Court justice, and you let the media try to control the narrative for that, it's not going to work ever, because, especially not our media, it's not going to work. Because you have people that are trying to control a narrative that has evidence behind it, and people expect evidence because of what it is. It's not like a theatrical, oh my God, I could totally believe that, because we've all heard the stories of the casting couch, right? So I could totally believe that Weinstein did those things. I totally believe it. But a judge? Fuck no. A judge, this is the place where you have to have evidence. You have to.
To be fair, I would like to see the media stop trying to push this social agenda methodology, because it seems to me that they're so much more concentrated on a narrative idea than actually giving factual-based reporting. And I think this is part of what's caused some of the degradation of the media in this country. It's why so many people don't believe the mainstream media anymore. Why so many people are coming onto YouTube and BitChute and Daily Motion to listen to people like you and I, Atema, talk about what's going on, is because a lot of your newscasters aren't actually reporting anymore.
Did you hear how they were talking about fucking Kanye?
Yeah, I've heard some of it today. He's sitting right now with the president. On my Twitter feed, an image of him shaking President Trump's hand just flashed up.
What? Can you
But
fucking believe it?
CNN
Oh my God, I was so mad.
CNN is claiming he's the token black person in the Trump administration.
Because yeah, Ben Carson.
Yeah. Well, you know, they call him an Uncle Tom, so.
Oh.
See, once again, a lot of this comes down to a concept of a listen and believe type mentality. You know, oh, I'm going to call you this, and everybody's going to believe it without any evidence, without any reason, without any due cause. And it's almost like people have decided to take their freedom of speech, and instead of using it responsibly to actively interact and debate and such, they're just using it to try to slander people and force everybody to think like them. And it's kind of disturbing, realistically, because debate solves more issues than slander ever has.
Yeah. But when you don't have an argument and all of your proof shows that your idea is bad, and the reason you had to go the subversive route and go into academia and slowly implement your ideas is because they're that bad, you have no way to debate.
You really don't.
Because it's an entirely emotionally driven ideology. Because it's all collectivistic. I mean, let's be real. It's socialism, communism, fascism, ethno-nationalism. That's all collectivistic. Okay, it's all about everything being like the other thing, and that's not how humans are. I don't know if you know this, but every human, including identical twins, has absolutely unique DNA that actually changes and adapts as we age.
Well, and I can tell you this much. The idea of currency and the idea of capitalism and the idea of personal ownership.
These are all intuitive to humans.
These are natural. Look at 2 or 3 little kids playing together, and all of them have different toys. They're going to change toys. They're going to exchange them for what they want to play with.
Yeah, or I'd try to take that toy from that child without his consent.
Oh yeah, or take it, at which point, you know, that's where we get into the idea of where government's actually supposed to intercede.
But that's what I'm saying. But watch a child. It is part of the primal human experience and condition to understand and value property rights. You go up to a baby and I'm talking newborn. You take something out of their hand that they think is supposed to be there, they will cry.
Yes, they will. They will.
You take it out of a 4 or 5 months old's hand, you take something from them, they're going to get mad. It is something we know, like our primal brains understand property rights. How the hell can you try to set up a society where there are no property rights? How do you think that is going to work? You are telling everybody that they have to stop being human to do what you want them to do.
Well, it's worse than that, Atima. You're telling them that they can't even be mammalian. Look at canids, wolves. For those people who aren't familiar with the Greek, wolves will mark their territory on the boundary by defecating and urinating, which will distinctly cause the outer boundary to have a unique odor to the group of wolves that live there, annotating that that's their property, their hunting ground, where they live.
Exactly.
Wolves aren't the only ones that do it. Large cats do it. All of your predatory species mark their areas. Shoot, to some extent, some non-predatory species mark their areas. Large mammals are known for it, specifically like elephants and several others that are somewhat self-aware and sentient. Rhinos, for example, will mark their territories. Hippos do it too.
Well, it's even something that reptiles and insects do. Birds do it as well. I mean, well, some birds, mostly raptors, do it. But
Yeah, it's a primal thing to want territory, annotate where you are. This is mine. And the idea that we can stop having what's mine and only have what is ours as a whole
It
is...
doesn't even work on the familial communal level. I mean, it's even in a family, everybody has little things that are theirs, right? You have your room, you have your bed, your clothes. My kids have their room, their bed, their clothes. Everybody has their own specific pencil, their own toothbrush, their own hairbrush, things that belong to you. Even in the family community, they may share them, but they belong to them. You know what I'm saying? Like
Oh, I get
it,
what you're saying. And a lot of communists turn around and say, well, we're not talking about all property. Of course, you're going to still have your shirts. But you can't have that stack of gold that you've acquired from currency that you've exchanged for it, because all the gold belongs to everyone.
well, that's what I'm saying. It's
But realistically, it's a false argument. It's a
it
straw
is.
man at that point. Because if you can exchange for it, if you have the right to own a toothbrush, then you have the right to own gold. You know, if you have the right to own a fork, you have the right to own an axe.
But we could also
Because,
use that to say you could own a person too, which is kind of a scary argument. But you know, I kind of like the absolute voluntaristic nature of me wants to say, if a person is willing to sell themselves into slavery voluntarily, who am I to say that they shouldn't be allowed to do that if they want to? If
I
they want to, how can I say no? Because if somebody wants to die, I'm for assisted suicide. You know, it's one of those like weird, you have to look at it case by case kind of things. And I would never advocate for slavery. But at the same time, I'm like, how do you create the absolute? I guess you just have to say that there's no such thing as an absolute philosophy at that point, don't you? You just have to say that life doesn't operate within absolutes, because even if somebody says they're wanting to sell, they're voluntarily willing to sell themselves into slavery.
yeah,
Is it for society as a whole? Because you do have to think of it in a generalized term, because it is very cooperativistic. It's a whole lot of individuals coming together and interacting on a macro level. So if you're
no, I get where you're going, and
yeah, it's but
normally
it's a
the way
tough
I
question,
address
isn't it?
normally the way I address that, Atima, is that there is an absolute right to self ownership. You automatically own yourself. If you can own private property, then you have to also own yourself. Now,
Yeah,
if you decide to commit suicide, then you still own yourself and you own your death. But
yeah.
no other person can take ownership of you. You own yourself.
Oh yeah, no, like nobody else can make you physically do things and stuff like that. But I'm like,
Yeah,
from the voluntaristic standpoint, I guess you just have to say, okay, we have to have some sort of boundary that involves the non-aggression principle. Because at that point, even if I'm saying I want to give up my rights and become somebody's slave, uh, we have to say, no, you can't do that, because that violates the entire premise of being part of our society, because we're all supposed to have this equality of rights basis.
yeah, yeah,
So you, even as absolute voluntary person, you have to have a boundary,
yeah,
because I really
yeah.
dislike the idea of slavery, but at the same time, like, if
Who
you
am I
take
to tell somebody how to live? I get that.
exactly,
I
it's
get that.
frustrating, because I don't want to say, oh yeah, you can sell yourself, that sounds fine to me, because it doesn't. But at the same time, I'm like, I can't be, I can't say you're not allowed to, because you're volunteering to do it.
Well, and once again, that's why I come back to the idea of you can't transfer that right of self ownership,
Yeah, yeah, I guess you
because
can't.
it's individual, and that's the only way I've been able to logically come to it in my head as to how it should be. Is that there is an individual right of self ownership, and it's non transferable.
It's not even a right. It's
Well, it's a natural right. When I say a right, I'm talking
okay, yeah,
natural
like
rights here, like
born
the...
with kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing that's passed to you. It's not endowed by any document. It's something that you have the second you take even before you take your first breath, in my opinion. But legally speaking, in this country, the second you take that first breath, you've got it. There's no way to get rid of it. It just is. You
Yeah,
have
I
the
get what
right.
you're saying.
You have the right to self ownership. You have the right to your life, and you have the right to personal property. This goes back to the Locke philosophy, and I know a lot of people are all confused as to why I constantly refer back to Locke, but he was a brilliant man, and he's been the only way I've been able to rationalize some of these concerns, like why was slavery realistically immoral completely no matter what.
Especially when you have the voluntary aspect to it. I
Yeah.
mean, because we have indentured servitude, and that was the thing that people did. You know, I'll sell you my rights, or I'll loan you my rights for a specific amount of time, for a specific amount of, my life and my rights are worth X amount of dollars for X amount of time under your patronage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
But it ended. It was supposed to be a contract. It was like an employment contract, but it ended extreme.
yeah.
Um,
Well, do you know how that actually got changed? In the United States specifically? There was a case brought forward. A freed black man had an indentured servant. The indentured servant thought his contract was up and went to go work for another person. The person holding the contract then took him to court. And that was the first instance of legalized slavery in the United States. Because prior to that, it was all indenture. There was no actual slavery. And it's funny that I have people tell me that, oh, slavery is enshrined in the Constitution. And I say, exactly where is that? And they're like, oh, it's in there. And I'm like, no, the only thing that allowed slavery to stand was the fact that the Constitution honored precedents from legal cases before the Constitution was enacted.
okay. Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, that's actually what happened.
Life with other people happens.
Yes, yes, it does. Also, apparently the dogs are going crazy again. I think somebody blew some leaves somewhere or something and
Yeah.
caused them to trigger them.
A squirrel
But,
farted 4 blocks down the road.
well, the wind is going pretty heavy right now, so it's entirely possible that leaves were falling out of the trees, and that's what's causing them
Oh,
to get
like
all
hitting the
upset.
windows or something,
Yeah, yeah,
tapping
yeah,
on the door, making them think there's something out there. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's funny.
And I apologize to all of my normal viewers for the dogs in the background. I really have tried my hardest to get them all to settle down today, but with the amount of wind that we've got going through the state, it's just not feasible right now because there is just so much going.
You'd think there was a giant storm a state over or something that was affecting regular wind patterns.
Oh yes, yes, there is that crazy hurricane that's going through Georgia right now, and there's also a low pressure front pushing down from the Great Lakes, and so it's causing some real weird weather in Tennessee. But it's nice. It's nice.
Oh, it's finally nice and comfortable here. So
Oh yeah,
we got some rain. That was nice. That kind of knocked some of the pollen out. And
yeah, yeah. That definitely helps. But yeah, I think we keep coming back to the same conclusion, and I hate to say it, but I think it's honestly going to harm a lot more than just the Democrat Party. I think it's going to harm the egalitarians as well, like you and I,
oh,
Tema,
whew.
because it's going to.
It's already harming us. I mean, just look at the horseshoe theory. Okay, feminism in the 70s was a a pretty moderate thing. I like second wave feminism. It had some weird to it, but it was pretty moderate. And, everybody just kind of went, yeah, okay, we've done everything. And by the 80s, everything that the 70s second wave feminists had bitched about, it had been codified. Like
Yeah,
everybody had laws to make sure women could be managers, equal pay, blah, 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 blah.
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, equal pay started even before the second wave feminists really got taking off hard with JFK.
Oh yeah, but there were some companies still even into the 80s that they had to be taken to court because they were refusing to promote women. Like
Agreed, agreed.
they had
But
it
that gave them the
written in their
legal
policy.
framework to go do it. But that gave them
Yeah,
the legal framework to go
yeah,
do it.
it did. It did. So, but once they had pretty much codified everything they needed to codify, they ran out of shit to bitch about that was like realistically needing to be bitched about, and things got extreme. And when things get extreme, there's always going to be another extreme response. So right about the time these women started screaming at men for, opening doors and picking stuff up for them and things like that, you started getting a group of guys that were like, fuck that, I'm just not going to talk to women, fuck this. And each group has gotten more and more extreme to the point where now we have third wave feminists that are known as TERFs that think that even transsexual uh, individuals that go from male to female, those aren't women. You better not ever call yourself a woman. We're going to verbally attack you or chase you off the internet, all kinds of fucking things. You have this really horrible vitriolic group that goes to the extreme of TERFs that, the Dianic uh, worshippers that are like, men are scum. They're meant to be slaves to women. There needs to be a matriarchy kind of thing.
Women first.
Yeah, the women first thing. And then on the other end of it, you have the crazy, it's a very small group, like the Dianic anti-men turf group.
Yeah.
You have this crazy small group of vitriolically anti-female MGTOW.
Oh,
The
yeah,
rest of
yeah.
MGTOW were more just kind of like, dude, until you guys fix this, I'm gonna be a dick because y'all are being dicks. So, and there's, I get it. They've been burned. A lot of them are divorcees that have gotten fucked by a terrible legal system. Our deadbeat dad and our marriage laws are terrible, 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 terrible laws. And those are slowly starting to change little by little. It's just not it's not as fast as people want to see it, but it
Well,
is making a change. But
well,
these two extreme groups are so vitriolic. They're small though. They aren't very big. So they're able to concert their efforts to go harass and bother certain individuals, and it makes them look like they're a much bigger group than they actually are.
I don't disagree with you there. Now, something I did want to bring up, Atema, uh, the divorce laws are actually even more strict than they used to be in favor of women. And the divorce laws in this country have always realistically favored women, even when they were initially created, because they were created based off of the English legal code. And that's one of the reasons alimony even existed, was because a man who divorced a woman couldn't leave her destitute unless she remarried. Because until she did, he was still technically responsible for her.
Yeah.
It was one of the reasons Anne of Cleves officially became like the godmother to King Henry's children, was because he divorced her legally, but he couldn't leave her destitute and she never remarried. So instead, he had to pay to keep her in a house with necessary servants and food and clothing and everything else. And a lot of the feminist movement have actually lied about how those laws worked. And a lot of the feminist movement actually was responsible for seriously tinkering and destroying the way a lot of these laws work in the name of sexual equality. But what they didn't realize is the laws were actually designed to be equal originally because of the way the other laws worked around them. And I'm not saying those original laws were right, not by any means, but in the framework and when those laws were created, they actually balanced everything out and kept everything far more equal than people realized.
Oh yeah. Well, you also had a society where women generally didn't go into the workforce either. You know,
Agreed.
an egalitarian society, obviously we're getting towards a more egalitarian society. Women are starting to experience this, closer overall levels of stress in the workplace as men, actual egalitarianism, reality is kicking in, and the reality of working hard is kicking in, and you're seeing that it affects both genders the same way. Um, you're finding, biologically, women are still, even with feminism as prevalent as it is today, and as many women entering the workforce, you still have at least 30% of the female population that does not go out and enter the workforce. They stay home and they raise children. Okay, at
Yeah,
least 30%. That's the smallest number I can think of off the top of my head of stay-at-home moms in America is 30%. I think it's actually closer to 45%, but I can't remember.
but
It,
see, in an egalitarian society, shouldn't that be their own choice, no matter what the
well,
situation is?
that's the thing, though. The problem is that number is shrinking, and it's not because women are voluntarily leaving the home. It's because women have to leave the home because it's so expensive um, to just exist these days. The cost of living has gone through the roof. Our society is set up so that everybody is paying taxes now. Everybody's paying into the tax system. That's
It
the
is.
goal.
Well, and that's also been a move by the Democrat, and actually,
Yes.
believe it or not, the feminists.
Yes.
The feminists actually were part of the reason why we have the crazy tax codes that we have federally now. The women's temperance movement, which was the predecessor to what's considered the suffragette movement, pushed the progressive income tax system along with the Progressive Party, which folded into the Democrats, to allow prohibition because the United States used to exist exclusively off excise taxation and alcohol taxes.
Yeah.
And when they did away with the excise taxation, they had to have something to replace it. That's how we got the amendment to the Constitution that even allowed them to income tax. Because prior to that amendment, it was actually anti-constitutional to income tax.
What was considered anti-American to tax people's income.
It really was, and I still think it really is even to this day. I don't think we should be taxing people's incomes. I can
No.
understand sin taxes. I can even, to a limited extent, understand property taxes, for larger things such as actually owning land. But I can't understand the taxation of income
I
because
could I could even agree to a sales tax.
I could even agree to a sales tax as well. But the idea that you should be allowed to tax money that somebody gives person A to person B for providing a good or service that person B then needs to possibly go buy their own goods and services, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
See,
You know what I'm saying?
employment works on supply and demand, but I don't think of it's more of a barter than
It
it
really is.
is a capitalistic trade. It's because there's more individual boundary set. Like you are determining that you are worth whatever they are willing to give you in monetary value for your labor.
Yeah.
That is much more barter like in nature because it's not like a good for a piece of paper or a slide of or a series of, it's not a physical transaction where you come away with something in your hand. It's a different style of transaction. In my mind, that's always much more of a barter. I think that's why we have the word employment rather than I'm buying your work from you. I'm not purchasing your services from you. It's not like a purchase and a sale in the same way. And I don't know why I've always made that differentiation, but I think it's because um, it is a personal thing. You're saying that yes, my labor and my time is worth X amount of dollars if you are willing to pay me that, and you are willing to pay me for that value. It's a value that you create. It's not like a standard sale where there's an external factor that gives you that acceptance evaluation.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with you on that one, Atema, because realistically, you have a fixed expense set that you have to have. Because you have to be able to meet your bills in order to have a roof over your head, your food, and everything
Oh
else.
yes.
So you've got an amount of fixed expense that each individual who's performing services, which is labor, in the market. So we look at it from a slightly different perspective. Neither one of us is necessarily 100% correct in
Yeah.
any determinancy, but I honestly, I do still see labor as an exchange of service, almost like,
Oh
going to
yes.
go see a lawyer or going to a diner and tipping the waitress and the amount that the waitress makes, simply because it is what it is.
Oh, no, see, I was saying, I'm sorry. I know the dogs are probably making you crazy. No, I was saying that by entering into an employment contract, I'm saying I agree that my time and my labor is worth X amount of dollars per hour. I
Yeah,
agree that my labor is worth that. I determine that that is a value I am willing to agree with. I am determining that is my value. It's not like, I go into the store and I determine that I am willing to pay this value for this item. It is that I'm saying I personally uh my self ownership, my time is worth, it's negotiable.
yeah,
Whereas um the vast majority, especially in America, okay, if we go to like Asia, it's a totally different story. But in America, when you buy stuff, there's not a lot of negotiation involved in most of the things that we buy.
agreed. But we also do more mass consuming shopping than in a lot
This
of
is
the
true.
other world.
This is true.
So and realistically, there is some negotiation. Like example, I was at Aldi's yesterday picking up smoked Gouda. Why did I go to Aldi's? Well, because I went to Kroger and I went to Publix and I even went to Walmart. And the price of smoked Gouda there was drastically higher than it was at Aldi's.
Yeah,
So instead, I went to Aldi's and made my purchase. And the labor market does work very similarly, but the problem is in the labor market, you're actually in the opposite scenario than you would normally be. You're the one providing the good, that's your labor. The employer is the one shopping.
yeah.
And so you're seeing it from the other perspective, which is how I've always kind of seen it and understood it. So you say
Yeah,
this is my price, and they either agree to it or they don't. And your price is based off your fixed needs plus whatever you're trying to increase your capability and value and standard of living.
I was just talking about it from a philosophical perspective because I thought we were talking about things from a philosophical perspective. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I got into I got into the economic perspective there, I
I was,
guess.
because I agree with you from the economics. I was talking about it philosophically, but I'm sorry. They don't work together the same way because economics and philosophy are not the same thing.
They definitely are not.
My
Although
bad.
plenty of people take the philosophy of failed economists and then try to use it to implement governments, but that's another story. Well,
Yeah.
I think we've covered everything that we wanted to cover last week. I want to apologize again to everyone out there for the technical difficulties we had last week, and apparently the technical difficulties I'm having this week with the canines and the weather, which is well outside of my control, unfortunately. I also hope all of the people who have joined me like the new look for my recording area and my live streaming area. You'll get to see a lot more of it as I do more videos. Atima, I know you've got some stuff coming up over the next couple of weeks, including.
Um, yeah, I'm having some logistical issues. I'm setting up a new camera or recording space because what I've got right now isn't going to work. I'm going to start doing videos again, and I'm working on some ideas for a show. You can catch me on Mad Dodge Productions randomly throughout the week, 3 p.m. or yeah, 3 p.m. Pacific time is generally when we start. It's the Red Eye stream that I'm generally on. I think today is paranormal stuff, so we might be nerding out and talking about silly stuff. And then tomorrow it is tomorrow's Irate Prostate's cream stream. Which, if you guys aren't subbed, well, everybody I know that's watching is subbed to Irate, and he's awesome. And I think we have an amazing guest this week. And I'm not going to say anything other than it's an amazing guest. And other than that, keep an eye out for me. I'm looking at probably early on Mondays or Tuesdays. I will be doing stuff on my own channel. So yeah. Anyway. Uh, I hope everything's okay. I see that Veteran Mountain Man has locked up, so I'm not sure what's going on. Uh, yeah, I'll just sit here and talk about stuff till he comes back or the stream drops. Uh, I was looking at the news this morning and I saw some interesting, strange things out there. Oh, it looks like the call dropped. but the screen hasn't dropped. So perhaps he dropped from the call. Hopefully he just comes back real quick. So I was reading the news today, and I saw some interesting stuff. There's some very strange things going on out in the world today. People are freaking out because the Dow lost 800 points in one day because we put tariffs on China that we should have put on China forever ago. And everybody's acting like it's the end of the world, but it was to be expected. We just tariffed almost half of what we buy and sell from them. Oh, thank you very much, Exiled. I didn't know. I'll have about 5 minutes left. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I didn't know that. I'm still pretty new to this thing, and he's still not back. So, but I was reading the article, and everybody's acting like it's the end of the world. Well, it's not the end of the world. We should have had these tariffs in place a long time ago. China is notorious for humanitarian issues, and they've been undercutting our economy with their trade deals with us for far too long, and it's actually damaging our economy, and our manufacturing is hurting quite badly because of it. So I don't see the problem with yeah, I hope I hope he can correct some of these bubbles too, because looking at the commercial realty industry right now, it's not looking so good, and we need to have a correction before that turns into something bad. They're talking about interest rates going up, but I don't know if that was for bank transactions, because they didn't say what interest rates were increased. They just said interest rates raised. So I'm hoping that was mortgage rates, because if you get a little bit of interest rate raising, you're going to get people investing into them again, because right now there's no way to make a profit off of people borrowing the money. So and without that incentive in place, people aren't going to invest in the lending stock that needs to be available. I think I'm hoping that's something he can do. He's been talking about putting Reaganomics on steroids. If he can do it, that's brilliant. Let's hope he doesn't have that 2-year lull that Reagan did. It looks like he's not. Market optimism is still really high, even with the 3-point drop yesterday. But apparently, it's not as bad as the drop from February. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. That's kind of. It seems like the stock market has become more like the stock market used to be, where it's more unpredictable and a little more volatile and risky, which is kind of good, because that encourages people to do more with the stock market. I think when it's more dramatic, people tend to want to buy and sell more often. It's an interesting dynamic I've watched over the years. There was something else I was looking at. Hold on, let me go scroll through my list here. Well, Slate's decided to come after Discord, because apparently this is where the alt-right, over a year ago, Discord is where the alt-right over a year ago planned Charlottesville 1.0, and there are some alt-right people left on Discord, so we have to go after Discord and make them moderate what everybody says. My hope is that they are not going to kowtow. They're just going to go, hey, look, this thing is too big. Fuck you. We can't do that. And leave it at that, because it's really going to suck if Discord gets hit with the same kind of rules that Twitch has, and we all get kicked off for making fucking jokes now. That'll really suck. Let's see, what else was there? There was something else I was going to talk about, and I'm too tired to remember what it was. So I'll just pull back up the headlines. Headlines. The Dow dropped 500 again today, probably because of the storm. That generally happens. We have a drop when there's big storms and natural disasters in America. That happens to us. There was where is it? I'm looking. It's not here anymore. Well, that sucks. Well, apparently Michelle Obama is not going to be running for president in 2020. I'm sure you're all incredibly disappointed in that one. We were all looking forward to her running. You know,